As the curtain falls on the time frame for filing of petitions against the outcome of the February 25 presidential election, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, and People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, Action Alliance, Solomon Okongwa, and Allied People's Movement, APM Chichi Oje, have filed for the nullification of the declaration of Bola Tinubu of the All Progressive Congress as president-elect by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Atiku swelled the list with his petition filed on Tuesday in Abuja, although details of the application by the PDP were yet to be made available. Atiku and his party have since faulted the entire process that led to the emergence of Tinubu as president-elect. Meanwhile, Obi yesterday asked the Presidential Election Petition Court, PEPC, to declare him as the authentic winner of the February 25 presidential election. Peter Obi has already hinted at what his team of lawyers will bring to the table in his attempt to have the panel upturn the election results. Arise correspondent Godfrey Osemagai paints a picture of the impending legal battle.
Presidential election petitions are filed 21 days after announcement of the results, with a 180-day timeline within which to dispose of the case. Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), who emerged runner-up behind the winner Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC, is already contesting the declared results in Nigeria's keenly contested elections of recent. But Peter Obi, who emerged third, is by far the most vocal of all four top contenders who were in the run-up for Nigeria's top job. The electoral traction which the Labour Party presidential candidate had gained in recent months was largely due to the huge activities by his popular supporters known as the Obedients. But with the case shifting to the courtrooms now is a different ballgame. Key among the submissions in Peter Obi's petition is INEC's computation and declaration of results, including the announcement of Bola Tinubu as winner, which he claims did not comply with INEC guidelines, and as such affected the votes meant for the Labour Party. The Labour Party candidate is also contending that at the time of the conduct of the presidential election, Tinubu was not qualified to run due to a pending lawsuit against him, and for his running mate, Kashim Shettima, who was still a serving senator when he ran for office, he alleged that it is in clear breach of the Electoral Act, and in consequence, Peter Obi, among other prayers, is asking the tribunal to issue him a certificate of return as the duly elected Nigerian president, or in the case where it cannot do so, he is urging the panel to cancel the entire election and hold fresh polls of which the APC presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu will not be on the ballot. Godfrey Eshemoge, Arise News.
All right. Aya, a lot to talk about as regards to this.
Yes, a lot to talk about. Go to court. They have gone to court. As you mentioned earlier on, Rufai, the details of Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party is whom we have in terms of what the prayers is filed in terms of his petition. Now, he's jointly petitioning alongside the Labour Party, and the respondents, first respondent is INEC, second respondent is the President-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, third respondent in this case is the Vice President-elect Senator Kashim Shettima, and the fourth respondent is the APC, the party itself. Godfrey already shared with us the prayers he's seeking before the courts, and we have been talking about his legal team, made up of about 13 SANs and led by Mr. Livu Zoku, whom I'm sure he would be drawing vast experience, the senior advocate of Nigeria, and also having been lead counsel previously in an election tribunal representing former President Atiku Abubakar, who is also petitioning the courts. Now, in terms of the prayers of Mr. Peter Obi and the Labour Party before the courts, before the election tribunal, what they're praying the courts for, number one is on eligibility. This has come up again in terms of how eligible not just the president-elect was to run for that election, but also the vice president, Senator Kashim Shettima. For president-elect, he's brought up or regurgitated his narcotics allegation case, which he would have to prove. We've talked about it a number of times that the burden of proof at the election tribunal would be on the parties, on the petitioners, against, well, in this case, INEC and the other respondents. So So the first thing is, so that's going to come up, and a number of observers, lawyers, and pseudo-lawyers have had a lot to say about this in terms of how this will play out in court, who would be summoned to represent, to come to give testimony, and other matters arising. Now, the case of the vice president-elect, as was shared in that petition, is the fact that it was said that he was still, he had running, well, a nominated candidate for senator whilst he was nominated as vice president, therefore making it null and void according to the provisions of the Constitution. The other aspect of his prayers also speak to the fact that, as Godfrey mentioned, irregularities was marred by irregularities and INEC breaking its own rules. So that's another prayer. Also, in terms of the number of votes, the actual number of votes accrued to him on the platform of the Labour Party, saying that there should be a recount and he should be declared winner, as from his investigation, he has proof to show or to demonstrate that he actually got more votes than the president-elect. Therefore, he ought to be considered winner. He's also praying the court for there to be an outright, if in the case that that doesn't happen, an alternative outright cancellation of the elections or that happened on the 25th of February, and a fresh election should be conducted by INEC. This election, he's praying, would exclude Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Senator Kashim Shettima of the APC. These are critical aspects of the petition that he's filed. Now, I've seen somewhere people have said jokingly that Nigerian elections, in this cycle at least, has become government democracy, has become government for the people by the judiciary, for government of the people by the judiciary for the people. Because what we see now is that in election cases, the courts decide finally who would emerge candidate. It's the courts then listens to the merits of the case to determine who will become, who will emerge as the ultimate winner. What Nigerians are looking forward to, despite all that has been said in terms of the judiciary, fairness, integrity of the judiciary, is that we're looking forward to a fair trial, not a media trial, but the merit of the case being weighted so that the wish and the will of the Nigerian people would be ultimately what would emerge. And that's what we, as a people, are praying the courts to consider.
Well, okay, as we speak now, as part of the fallout of the governorship and State Houses of Assembly elections conducted on March 18, there have been protests reported from Nasarawa State, from Kano State, and also from Enugu, from Abia, and other parts of the country. But the question has been, the message has been, that all aggrieved parties should seek redress through constitutionally provided means. In other words, seek redress through legal and constitutional means by going to court and not take the laws into your hands. We hope that the example that has now been set by the presidential candidates who have gone to the Court of Appeal, acting as a presidential election tribunal, will be an example that will be followed by other aggrieved parties in the entire process. Having said that, it is also important to note that last week, Mr. Peter Obi had made it very clear that he will not be part of the hashtag End Nigeria, hashtag End INEC protests that the group, Obedient, some of them, had declared. Although on this same program, he had made a clear distinction between the Labour Party and the Obedient movement, which he says is larger and bigger, more extensive than the Labour Party. But as Labour Party presidential candidate in that election, he has now gone to court. But he's not alone. Yesterday, at about almost close to 11 o'clock, the People's Democratic Party also went to file its petition before the court. Other parties that have filed petitions include the Action Alliance, AA, and also the Allied People's Movement. So as we speak, the tribunal, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, has 4 petitions before it. 4 major political parties beating the deadline and making sure that their petitions have been filed. What is next? What is next now is that the tribunal will begin to hear the matters. The key difference is that in the Peter Obi Labour Party case, as plaintiffs, there are 4 respondents: Tinubu, Kashim Shettima, APC, and INEC in that order. In the PDP case, there are only 2 plaintiffs, the PDP and Atiku Abubakar, and 3 respondents. Kashim Shettima, the vice presidential candidate and vice president-elect of the APC, was not included among the respondents. So the essential difference in those 2 major petitions is that in the case of the petition by the Labour Party and its candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, are asking that, in fact, both Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his running mate, Kashim Shettima, were not even qualified in the first place. Number 2, they are asking that they should have been, the Labour Party won the election, and that, Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not win that election. They're also saying that INEC did not follow his own rules, and that that election was conducted in violation of the enabling laws of the Electoral Act. So, at the end of the day, Labour Party is coming up with 5 prayers, 2 main prayers and 3 alternative prayers, all to the effect that that election, 1, should be declared null and void and cancelled, and a rerun ordered in the event that the court cannot say, okay, Tinubu did not win, let's annul some of his votes and then declare Mr. Peter will be the winner of the case. In the case of the PDP and the 2 other political parties, AA and APM, they are also asking that that election was not conducted according to the law. Well, I mean, without prejudice to what will come up at the tribunal, now that the matter is before the tribunal, it will be wrong. It will be contemptuous for anyone to try to argue the case outside the province of the tribunal. However, certain sections of the law are likely to be at issue. Section 47 of the Electoral Act specifically, Section 47 of the Electoral Act, sub 2, sub 3, prescribe how presiding officers at polling units should manage results, how they should rely on technological device. But that section is very clear that whatever technological device that they adopt must be as prescribed by INEC. And that if there is any issue, INEC reserves the right to cancel the election at that particular polling unit and then order another election within 24 hours, which was the case during the presidential election in 141 polling units in Bayelsa State, and which was also the case, more or less, although the circumstances are a bit more detailed, in Lagos State, in 10 polling units in the Lekki VGC area of Lagos. Also of interest will be Section 131 of the Nigerian Constitution, which deals with qualification for the presidential election. Also at issue will be Section 137, sub D, sub E of the 1999 Constitution, dealing with disqualification, because the case of the Labour Party is inked on 137D and E about Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu having had a case in the United States involving $460,000. Also at issue here will be sections 148 and 149 of the Electoral Act. Section 148 gives INEC the right to issue guidelines. So the question will be, did INEC follow his own guidelines? Section 149 says where anybody is aggrieved that it has not followed its own guidelines, the place to go is a court. Well, also may be of issue will be Section 60 of the same Electoral Act. So we should expect a lot of legal fireworks at the tribunal. Already, some of the parties who are protesting are saying, well, maybe for the first time in Nigerian history, we'll see a presidential election being overturned by the tribunal. But, it's a long race. It's a long road ahead. This is just the beginning of it. But what is important is that the various gladiators have chosen the option of seeking redress in a peaceful manner through the courts. And the burden now, the heavier burden, will be on the judiciary to ensure that justice is not just done, but it is seen to have been done.
All right. Finally, we're in court. But I think the bone of contention why people are going to court is how the elections were conducted, the process. And I'll remember and I'll try to summon the story of Abel Mutai. I'm sure you're going to ask me, what will a Kenya runner do as regards the election petition in Nigeria? A lot. Abel Mutai had a very interesting story. He was running at a marathon. He was close to the end point, but because of the signage, he thought the race was over. So he stopped for a bit. But another Spanish runner kept on pushing him and urged him to finish. And when the Spanish runner was asked, why did you push him to the end? You could have won the race. He stopped running. He didn't see the signs. And he said, no, it is only justice that will allow me to do that, because if he had continued, he would have won the race. But I want to build a community where we do things rightly. And that's the correlation here. The reason why these petitioners are going to court is because they want to challenge what happened as regards the system, the irregularities as regards the electoral process. 4 parties have gone to court. 4 political parties. Peter Obi of the Labour Party, Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, the APM, and other political parties in there. And what are they challenging? The process. What part of the process they're challenging? The collation of results. They sought 4 reliefs, like the Labour Party, for instance. They talked about Bola Tinubu's $460,000 drug case for feature in America. They talked about the fact that Shetima was the 7th senator when he was made a vice presidential candidate. They also talked about the process itself, where they challenged the coalition. They also talked about INEC violating various ex partes order, despite 5 different letters written in March to INEC to be able to allow them, see and access the materials. But INEC didn't do the same. They also enumerated the fact that INEC did not even give them the full viewing of the materials they wanted. In some cases, they said some of the materials and the forms were not available. They now went further to challenge the collation of the results. They talked about Rivers. They talked about Benue, claiming that their candidate won in Rivers and in Benue, but the votes, were manipulated to favor the opposing party. They talked about their own empirical facts. And for them to be able to defend this case, and furthermore, they talked about that sticky 25% in Abuja. For them to be able to defend the case, they talked about the fact that they'll have witnesses like people that will have representatives from the Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is being mentioned here because the INEC server is hosted on the Amazon Web Services, AWS. They talked about forensic experts as witnesses. They'll also take clips from television and newspaper entries as regards the electoral process. And they have a potpourri of witnesses, and it was also contained in the oath, about a 100-page document. In all of this, they have put their case forward, challenging the process. I'm excited about this process because the very first time we're going to have an election petition that would deal with technological outplay as regards the process. So our courts and judges, will they be equipped enough? And we trust them to be able to look at the technological detail, because it's going to be about a lot of forensic analysis and looking into the process and what emerged. That will also be part of forensic thumbprints, places where you had multiple voting of one thumbprint voting so many times. All of that are going to be looked at. So we will see the display of this. This has been filed in the Court of Appeal, and we all know how the process goes. Definitely, if they are not content, people definitely get to go to the Supreme Court before this is made. But most importantly, apart from the court process and apart from our lords and judges, and like a lot of Nigerians said, the all eyes of the nation is upon our judiciary now to look at our laws, interpret them, and give justice where necessary. Apart from all of this, the question is, because I've also been seeing a lot of statements attributed to people that after elections it's time to heal. Yes, it's time to heal, but you cannot heal without justice. There are people that their heads have been broken. They are still in the hospital because we did elections on Saturday. There are people that the hurt is so much. Somebody called me yesterday that he went to 15 different condolence visits in Rivers State because of people that have been killed. From one family alone, 2 people were killed because they're polling agents. We can't heal without justice being done for those people. We want the collective development and the prospect of our country to shine bright, but it must be based on justice. And like I always say, it is righteousness that exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any nation. Let's stop the sin in the land. God bless Nigeria.